Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's Journey Through Torah. We start a new book today. We're starting the book of Deuteronomy, or Devarim, as it is in Hebrew. The book of Devarim is words, and we know it's part of the Torah, and so part of the first 5 books of the Bible. We know this is the words of Yahweh that are written to us, but it's interesting how this book starts. This book starts Ele Hadvarim, so these are the words of who? Of Moses. So we know, all right, so Yahweh said that he speaks with Moshe like he speaks to no one else. He speaks with him mouth to mouth, literally is how it says in the Hebrew. So he gives him his words. So in this book, what we find is Moshe reiterating the words to the people. Now, the interesting thing about this is that he wasn't necessarily commanded to do this before Israel could go into the land, because this is where they are. They're poised opposite the land, across the Jordan, about to go into the land. And before Moshe has to pass and this generation can go into the land, Moshe now takes this opportunity. And I kind of put it that way because it's really kind of the way it says in the scripture. Moses takes this opportunity to remind Israel of who they are, who Yahweh is, what he's brought them through, the promises that he has for them, and what he's going to do once they get into the land, and how they are to live once they're there. Just to name a few things. So Moshe is not giving Israel a history lesson here as much as he is reminding them of the goodness and the faithfulness of Yahweh. So when we start this book, let's not approach this as the name Deuteronomy, Deuteros Nomos, second law. Let's not approach it in a manner of thinking of law, do and don't, lists of things. But let's look at this as this is from the heart of Yahweh, from the heart of Moshe, written so that the people can live the way that Yahweh designed and wanted them to live in the land once they got there. In other words, walking in the promise. We've been in the wilderness long enough, right? But we have to learn how to walk in the promise, which we also relate to walking in the kingdom of Yahweh here and now. So how do we live in his ways here and now? It's also interesting to note that when Yeshua was tempted in the wilderness, he quoted from Devarim. There's a lot of good stuff in here. So before we can kind of get in and just start laying it all out, we're going to take this time and go over a couple definitions and go over a couple things to help set up the rest of the book. Okay, because in this book of Deuteronomy, we'll find some things that is not found in other parts of the Torah. And if we follow this understanding, Moshe is explaining the Torah to the people. Then he's kind of giving them the Torah, reiterating it, but kind of helping it to unfold in a way that they can understand and grasp it so that they can go into the land and do it. Okay, so we've got a few things to cover in here, all right? So let's start off with Deuteronomy 1, verse 5. It says, "Beyond the Jordan, in the land of Moab, Moses undertook to explain this law, saying," so there's a few things that he goes on here. First off, we're going to look at this word, undertook. What does it mean to say that Moshe undertook to explain this law? So this word is ho'il, from the word ya'al. And what it means, let's cover this definition. According to the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, this word ho'il means to make a volitional decision to commence a given activity. Okay, so this decision is to begin an act. It clearly indicates a function of one's mind to initiate. This verb concentrates on a volitional element rather than upon emotional or motivational. You see that. It's a conscious thought. It's not just based on something emotional in the moment. Okay, this is something that was forethought and that was given a lot of thought to. All right, so it stresses a voluntary act of an individual's will to engage in a given enterprise, not what may have brought him to that decision. Theologically, this verb strongly supports the concept of a man's free will. Man can make decisions to initiate any given action, but God holds him responsible for that decision. So what we see here, Moshe is exercising his will to resolving or to expound the Torah to the people of Israel. So again, this was a decision that Moshe made to do this. This was not something necessarily that Yahweh commanded him to do, but Moshe felt this was necessary for the people, and so he addressed them before he was to pass on and before they were to go into the land. This was his decision. Okay, so he took it upon himself to expound in this Torah. Let's look at that word expound for a second. This is Be'er et HaTorah. Be'er is the word we're going to look at for expound. It's from the word Ba'ar, which means to engrave, which is also related to a well, by the way. But this word Ba'ar, it means to engrave, like engraving, to declare something, to make it plain. And so how does this relate to the Torah? Because where is it supposed to be written? Not just on paper, but in your heart. It's supposed to be within you. That's the idea of digging or engraving something into something else, okay? Where do we see this? And where do we see the idea that the word is not just something that's to be written on a page or read, but something that is supposed to be actually a part of who you are? See that? See the difference? It's not just something you read, it's who you are. And so when the word is written within you, it changes you into be more like that word, right? Let's look at a few scriptures. Jeremiah 31:33. This shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh. I will put my Torah where? I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Hebrews 8:10, this is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Adonai. I will put my Torah in their minds, write it on their hearts. I will be their God, they will be my people. Same thing with Hebrews 10:16, right? Again, in Hebrews, it's speaking from the Torah, what's being said. How do you get the word within you? How does it change you? How does this reaffirm the covenant? It is being written within you, okay? John 14:15, Yeshua speaking, he says, if you love me, you will what? If you love me, you will keep my commands. John 14:21, whoever has my commands and keep them is the one who loves me. And the one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and reveal myself to him. John 14:31, rather this is happening so the world may know that I love the Father and that I do as the Father has commanded me. Let's keep going. John 15:10, if you keep my commands, you will stay in my love just as I have kept my Father's commands and stay in his love. And 1 John 5:2, here's how we know that we love God's children. When we love God, we what? Also do what he commands. In 2 John 1:6, moreover, love is this, that we should live according to his commands. This is the command, as you people have heard from the beginning, now live by it. So again, this Torah is to be within us, right? Is to be engraved within us. Not just a matter of it being spoken, but it being received and becoming a part of who you are, right? And that's what we're looking at. And that word expound is related to the word well, but it also means to make plain. Let's look at this. To make distinct, or to declare something, or to make something plain, to make it clear is what we're looking at. And it shares the root with be'er, which is a well. So although it can't be certain whether it's the etymological connection between making plain and well, this is interesting. The word for eye and the word for a water spring is the same word in Hebrew. It's ayin. It indicates that while water is connected to the act of seeing, it may also be related to understanding, which is another form of seeing. So the word for eye, ayin, is also the word for a spring well. So the idea is that the eye sees clearly is a flowing water spring. And a nice clear water spring, you look in it, you see a reflection, right? But it's not just that. It's the idea of we're relating this to the word of Yahweh in and of itself as well, because the word for Torah we'll get to in a second. So by expounding on Yahweh's words, Moshe was providing Israel with clear, well-drawn, living water in the dry desert. And doesn't he say this? He gave them water in the desert because Yahweh provided water from the rock, right? So he gave them a spring of living water so that they could see and walk with him. So he did this to explain the what? To explain and make plain the Torah. The word Torah is from the word yarah, which means to flow like water, like even with rain. Isn't that interesting? So we have the idea of Yahweh's teaching and instructions, and there's so many relationships to water that we see in this. Because water can wash, it can make clean, it can give life, right? And so all of this is relating to what Yahweh is giving us. And it should be something that is very clear, something that is very plain, and something that we can understand. Now, the problem is, unless we seek him, we may not understand a lot of these things, because in our own mind, we tend to approach things with a preconceived idea of what something says, and then we filter everything through that. So there's a lot of areas where we have to relearn what Yahweh says about something and how he approaches something. And so again, this is washing that needs to happen. When we receive the word, it gives us power over the old life, over the old ways. Doesn't he say that when you come to him, old things have passed away, all things have become new? So that's something that we can stand in, that we can be assured of, that we're not the same people we used to be. We are new. When the word is written within us, it changes you. And now it's the word isn't just something that you read. It's not someone, it's not like the word trying to drag you, running, kicking, screaming, whatever, to do what's right. If the word is written within you, it will change you to where you are drawn to Yahweh and his ways. And step by step, it will change you. Okay. So we need to understand how to live. We need to understand how to move forward. And this is the importance of having the word that is given to us. Moshe took it upon himself to expound, to make clear this Torah of living water that would be flowing to the people. When they go into the land, they're going to see a lot of things that may contradict what they think. Much like when they went in the wilderness. When they went in the wilderness, they're like, wait a minute, it's not supposed to be like this. Well, how did they know? You know, they weren't told it was going to be easy. They just told Yahweh was leading them out to follow, right? And so when they go into the land, it's going to be a very similar situation. What they think may not necessarily be the way things are. So they need to have the instructions of Yahweh very clear to them, to have it plain to them, so that they can carry it through and walk in them, right? We need to have clear instructions so that we can move forward. And so we need to explain the word. And when we do so, that gives life to those who would hear it. And when they hear it, they receive it, and then they carry it with them. And that's a responsibility for us as a people of Yahweh, and for those who teach the Torah as well. When we come to those who are teachers and who are leaders, we need to not just hear their opinion. We need to hear the word that is given. We need to hear the word to be explained and to be expounded upon, just like Moshe did as well. And we see this time and time and time and time again, right? Like the Leviim and the Kohanim, the Levites and the priests, they were to teach and instruct the people in regards to the words of Moshe and the things that Yahweh expects for his people. Malachi 2:7 says that the lips of a priest should guard knowledge, and that people should seek, it says instruction, and different translations read differently, but this word is Torah, that the people should seek instruction from his mouth, for he is the messenger of Yahweh Tzavaot. He is one to give the Torah to the people, and he is to instruct them in Yahweh's ways. Okay? So, Moshe is taking it upon himself to expound, to make clear, to make plain the word of Yahweh in a way that they can walk in it once they get into the land. And what's some things that we see here? Okay, what's the first charge that's given here? Back to Deuteronomy 1, verses 5 through 8. Let's go. He reminds them of some different things they had conquered, some things that were good for them, good reminders how Yahweh was with them in the midst of all these things. But now go to verse 8. It says, so see, I've set the land before you. Go and take possession of the land that Yahweh swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give to them and their offspring after them. See all that? He's reminding them, okay, I'm not just telling you what's going on, but I've got a promise for you there, and that's where it's going to be, and you need to learn to go and walk in it. Now, in order to get there, what was the instruction to them? So again, Moshe was teaching them and instructing them, and then he says, so we're here at this mountain, and when we moved, Yahweh says, you've been at this mountain long enough. It's time to move toward the land and to move toward the promise, which leads to thought. We've been here at this mountain long enough, so it's time to move on. But what if we don't feel we're ready to move on? What if we don't want to move on? And these are problems we have in life. We're comfortable where we're at. We like what we know. Even if we are uncomfortable in what we know, we still don't want to move because we know this. What am I saying? That a lot of times we get in fear And we don't want to do what Yahweh is asking us to do because of the uncertainty that's involved in it. It's time to move into the land. It's time to move in the promise. It's time to have his kingdom manifest here and now in our lives, but we're uncertain of what that looks like. And so we're kind of skittish. We don't know if we should move or not. There are things that can hinder us from walking in what Yahweh has for us. What are some of these things that hinder us to moving on? Well, how about routine? How about comfort? How about complacency? Fear is a big one. Control. Living in the past, or having a critical spirit, or even a lack of faith. All of these things can keep us from stepping into what Yahweh has for us. And it's a good thing to examine ourselves to see if these things really do have a place within us, and to surrender to the Father so that we can move forward in what he desires for us, which is better than any place where we're at anyway, right? When we follow him, it is always better. So leads the question, do we really want to be an active part of the plan? What plan? The ultimate plan of redemption that Yahweh has for all mankind. Do we really want to step into the role that Yahweh has for us? He's got a plan for his people. He wants to have relationship with you. He has a plan to redeem mankind, but he uses his people in the process. Do we want to play our part in that? Are we willing to walk in the promise? What caused the people to stay for 40 years? How about the idea of, well, here we are, we know the land's there, but let's send spies. Why? Does it matter? Is it going to change what Yahweh said, right? Did they listen to Yahweh, or did they lean on their own understanding? When they leaned on their own understanding, then they lost heart, and then they lost faith, they lost hope, and that caused them to die in the wilderness, and the next generation have to be raised up, right? So this is all things that we have to take a good, honest look at. So we're talking about restoring mankind, bringing a restoration to his people. And speaking of restoration, let's kind of throw this in here just as a side note. Amos 6:4 says, "Woe to those who lie on beds of ivory and stretch themselves out on their couches and eat the lambs of the flock and the calves in the midst of the stall, who sing idle songs to the sounds of the harp like David, invent for themselves instruments of music, who drink the wine in the bowls, anoint themselves with the finest oils, but are not grieved over the ruin of Joseph." What does that mean? That means Joseph is in ruins. Israel was scattered into all the world and was out there in exile. Yahweh is desiring for us to have a heart for restoration, just as Yeshua said, "I've come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." He wants us to help be a part of bringing in the lost sheep. Does our heart cry out for those that are scattered and crying out for a restoration to bring back those that are in exile? We have a role to play in that. We have a part to do in that. And we have to have faith to walk in that, because it's going to be different than the way we've lived the rest of our lives, right? So faith and trust is important in how we live our lives. Hebrews 4 says, "Therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear lest any of you should seem to have failed to reach it. For good news came to us just as to them, but the message they heard did not benefit them, because they were not united by faith with those who listened." So the people that were there in that first generation, they heard the word, but it didn't change them effectively, because they did not allow it to go into them. They did not allow it to be engraved in their heart so that they could walk in it truly. They kept it externally. They pushed it aside. And when the words of men came, they received those words. But when the words of Yahweh came, they didn't want to hear those, because that contradicted what we saw. What we saw was this. But does it change what Yahweh said is what we should be asking. And that is the word we need to have within us. In other words, what I'm saying is, just as it was to the people of Israel, you've been at this mountain long enough. It's time for us as a kingdom people, as a people of the Most High, to step out from the areas where we're at and to have that faith that Yahweh wants his kingdom manifest here and now. He wants his word to be seen in the midst of a people who need it. We've been here long enough. Here's a few things for us to consider. When you think different, you will be different. You've dwelt long enough at this mountain. What does it mean to dwell? What are we dwelling in? What we're dwelling in is our ideas of the way life should be, and Yahweh's calling us to dwell with Him in a place of eternity, right? Even though we have time here, we don't understand some of these things, but Yahweh is limitless. He is timeless. He's asking us to bring a piece of eternity here now, to bring a piece of the kingdom here now. We need to dwell in that. We need to dwell in Him, and then the way we think about things is going to start to change. Does the scripture say, as a man thinks, so is he, right? So we need to make sure that it's the word that we're following so that we can learn to live in His kingdom. Galatians 6:9 says it well. He says, let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we don't give up. It's easy to get weary. It's easy to get tired. It's easy to think, well, how much longer do we have to do this? The answer is until you stop. So we need to continue to walk with Him, and don't go tired in doing what you're supposed to do. And it doesn't matter if anyone else is doing it or not. Don't grow tired in what is the word of the living God, but try to join in with people around you, to gather yourself around godly people who can help encourage you in the way and help point in that direction. Even Israel, the next generation, when they went into the land, they didn't go in one by one by one. They went in tribe by tribe by tribe. So we've got to try to find other people to gather in together to help us stand strong in the face of adversity and help keep our focus on the goal, right? John 14:26 says, the Comforter, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, whom the Father will send in my name, He will teach you all things and bring all things to remembrance, whatsoever I have said to you. Don't forget, you are not alone. Even if you don't have someone else literally and physically to grab arms with, the Ruach HaKodesh is there for you. Yahweh said He will send His Spirit to you so that you are not left alone. We need to grab hold of Him and let Him work within us. Isaiah 54:13 says, and all your children shall be taught of Yahweh, and great shall be the peace of your children. That's awesome scripture, but are we there yet? Not completely and fully, okay? But I do believe we're in process of that. Jeremiah 31:34 says, and they shall teach no man anymore his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know Yahweh, for they shall all know me. From the least of them to the greatest of them, says Yahweh, for I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. The idea, what we're saying, is turn our focus to Him, trust Him, and we will receive from Him the things that we need to live this life here and now. In the process, what Moshe was telling the people, don't forget where you came from, but don't forget why you came from there. Does it make sense? A lot of times it's easy to look back and to go back and to yearn when we're out of a situation and life gets hard now. We tend to look at the past with different eyes. But in the midst of what we were going through, we didn't like it. Now life is tough. Now we're like, oh, I wish it could be like it was then, right? We don't remember some of those things. So Yahweh, through Moshe, is reminding the people, don't forget where you came from, but don't forget why you left there. Okay, the idea to look back is not to go back. The idea why you look back is to see how far you've come and to see what Yahweh is leading you to. Look at where you've been, but the battle's not over. Look what Yahweh has brought you through. The point being, don't lose heart, because if He's led you out before, He will lead you out again. So as we read the book of Devarim, as we read the book of Deuteronomy, it's a reminder for the people of Israel and you. Receive this like this for yourself. It's a reminder of who you are, reminder of where you came from, how you got out, who led you from where you were to here. What did you go through in the process? And most importantly, who brought you through it? All good things for us to keep in mind, all good things for us to learn, all good things for us to not forget. The Yahweh your God is with you wherever you go. And He said He will not leave you, He will not forsake you. The thing is, we need to go with Him where He is. Not to let go of His hand and go running off doing our own things, right? We need to grab hold of Him, not let go, and follow Him wherever He leads. And in the process, learn from Him, hear His voice, have His word written within us so that it changes us, and helps to change the world that we live in, right? It is a process, a step-by-step process. May it be in our lives and may it be in our days, right? So thanks for tuning in. I pray that these teachings, I hope they encourage you, but I hope they challenge you as well. May they be a blessing to you, and may you have the peace that passes understanding as only Yahweh can give. So until next time, Shalom.